My name is Byard Wood. I'll be your trainer today, and I want to welcome you to Maximizer CRM Live Basic Training, which we now call Fundamentals Training. Right off the top, I want to make sure that you capture this phone number here, this 866 number, and also capture this email address here. The purpose being that we want to make sure that if you ever have any questions or problems with Maximizer, you know how to get a hold of us so that we can resolve them with you. Our goal is to make sure that you have a good experience with Maximizer, you know how to use it. If there's something you've forgotten how to do or you're not sure of or something isn't working properly for you, just get in touch with us. We have a whole team standing by to help you. Having said that, I'm going to pull my agenda over to the side here into a different screen that I've got. And I'm going to invite you to post your questions during the course of our class. We will have a live Q&A at the end. It'll either be myself or one of my other trainers who will pick up and do that. And we're off to the races. So let me log out of Maximizer so I can log back in again. When you first come to Maximizer and you put up the URL that we send to you, Maximizer will eventually bring you to this screen where you log in. And before we do that, let me just explain a couple of things. The default URL up here is going to be like this: https://caw.maximizer crmlive.com/. The follow-on part of this is going to be your database, the way that you've told us to set you up. But instead of CAW, it's CA1, maximizercmlive.com, and instead of the name of your database, you'll have all this stuff and nonsense after it. That's just how it resolves in the background. But eventually you'll come to this place here, and when we send you your initial registration documents, there is a link that you will follow through wherein you have to set up your user ID and your password, and eventually you get to log in. And the first thing you may want to do, if you haven't already set the password the way you want it, or if at any point in time you want to change your password, you simply come up here and click on this little wheel that looks like a gearbox or a gear, and you come down here and click on the word that says password. You type in your old password. Again, if we've sent you one, put that in there. If you've got one you've already created, put it in there. If you've forgotten it, there are ways to recover on that as well, by the way. But then you enter your new password and confirm it and click OK, and you're gone. What you have to do is make sure that your password is at least 8 characters long. It has to start with a letter. It has to include uppercase and lowercase letters, at least one number, and at least one of these symbols over here, the $, hash mark, or the underscore. Other symbols or characters are not allowed. So a typical password that would work would be to entitle this with a capital letter Maximizer. Maximizer, for example, 2019, and a hash mark. I'll let you see what that looks like. See that? Maximizer 2019, a hash mark. I've got upper and lower case letters. I start with a letter. I've got one or more numbers, and I've got one of those symbols. All I have to do at that point is confirm the new password, click OK, and that will be the password I use to get into my Maximizer. Remember, of course, to put in the old one up here. I'll cancel out because obviously I don't want to change mine. Once you're into Maximizer, you're going to be seeing something like this. You'll actually see a number of entries. Let me just go ahead and bring up a few more entries so you can see what that's going to look like. There's really no reason why I can't use, let me use this one here. I'll just retrieve this group of entries, whatever they are. And they're all contacts, just really not what I wanted. So let me go back and pull up a favorite list, a different favorite list. And there's a reason why I'm doing this, to show you how this sort of thing looks, and we're going to end up creating favorite lists and so on as well. Let me try this one. Nothing in that one. See that down there? It shows me how many entries are in that favorite list. There's none. So I'm quite comfortable with going ahead and deleting that particular favorite list, and it's gone. But I still need to find something that's got a few more entries than what I showed you there with the 2 that we began. I've got too many there. So let me come back down here to my list of lists, and I'm going to see what I can find here. Working with UDF video. Let me use that one. And if that doesn't work, I'll show you how we change it to get something that will work. And this looks like it will. I've got 8 displayed, 4 companies, 4 contacts. The only thing that's missing is an individual, and I'll be able to add an individual to this list. So when you first open up Maximizer, the very first time you open it up for yourself, there'll be about 7 or 8 entries in here of different kinds and types. And it's sort of a sample database that we include with the product when we ship it to you so that you don't start with a completely blank screen, which is fine. Now let me explain to you what you're actually looking at when you look at this screen. There's essentially 3 sections to it. There's the main screen up here. There are tabbed following windows down here, and over on the side is a list of available modules. As you know, or as you may know, Maximizer ships as a complete database solution. In other words, you don't have to go and pay extra to be able to get a leads module or a calendar or opportunities or anything else. It comes all included with your subscription to Maximizer. So what I want to do today is talk to you about the kinds of entries we can put in here, the way we can display them using column setups that we can change and adjust, the way we can see additional information down here in our tab following windows for any entry we're pointing at up here, and how we can then use the different modules to, again, store more information and do kind of different things. In the basic class here, my objective is to help you become comfortable with what you're seeing right now. In the intermediate class, we'll go into leads, opportunities, and customer service in detail, how to create a lead, how to create an opportunity, how to create a customer service case, and how to work with those things through to completion. We won't do that in this case today. All I'm going to do is give you a quick visual on each of those so you know kind of what it's going to look like, and so you're not afraid of it when you come to it. In the advanced class, we'll then take a look at seriously segmenting the database and finding ways to quickly and easily reach anybody in the database we need to deal with, whether we're going to do an email blast to them or some other kind of an activity. I'll also be showing you then how the import tool works, and we'll take a look at the administration area, particularly as it relates to our template library and the action plan library. And in the intermediate class, what we'll also do is deal with the setup of user-defined fields. So having said that, let me go ahead and get started. You'll notice that this over here says company, this says contact, and as you notice up here in my address book, which is basically everything that I've got in the database will show up in my address book, I've got 8 items displayed, 4 of which are companies and 4 of which are contacts, all right? And let me explain what I'm talking about there. A company is what we call a parent entry, and a contact is what we call a child entry. And a child has to be associated with a parent, generally speaking in real life, and similarly here. A child entry called a contact has to be associated with a parent entry, for example, a company. The other kind of entry we can have, the other kind of parent entry we can have is called an individual. Let me see if I can show something to you right now. I'm going to go up here to view and clear the list and get rid of everything that's in there, because probably one of the first things you're going to want to know is how to enter data into the database so that we can then look at it and deal with it. So to begin with, I'm going to come up here to edit, and you'll notice I can immediately add a company or an individual, but it looks like if I want to add a contact, that's kind of grayed out. And the reason for that is, again, a contact, which is a child entry, has to be associated with a parent entry, which can be a company or an individual. And here in our main window right now, there's nothing. There's no parent entries. Therefore, I cannot enter a contact. So let's begin by adding a company. The red field here indicates a mandatory field, so I have to have a company name. So let's call this one, I don't know, let's call this Fortune Metals, okay? And the next thing I do is fill out all the rest of the information for a company that I've got. I've got a scroll bar over here on the right, so I have a chance to see what else I should be entering. By default, Maximizer assumes there are default key fields, default important fields that I might want to be putting some information in that relates to Fortune Metals. For example, do not solicit by. Well, typically nowadays we say that's for fax. Don't bother sending me a fax. I don't have a fax machine, etc. An account manager is important. And in this case, I'll set myself as the account manager. Now, the account manager is anybody who's a licensed user of Maximizer in your office. If you're a single user office, that's kind of obvious, it's you. But if you're part of a multi-user office, then it may be that you set yourself as the account manager for this entry, or if you're an assistant for somebody, you might set them as the account manager for the entry that you're putting in on their behalf. The date last contacted, don't worry about that. I'm not sure if that one automatically shows up in default fields, but in the next class in intermediate, we'll show you how to put that there in this default key field list anyway. These others, full access by default, Maximizer assumes you want to let everybody in the company see this entry and be able to have access to it. If that's not the case, you can come over here and say only Bayard should have access, and I'll push him over here instead of public. But in this case now, I'll take me out and leave it as public. And similarly for read access, if it's important for me to keep control of the entry to myself, then I would give myself full access, but I might give read access to the public so anybody else can see the entry even if they can't work with it. In Maximizer, it's kind of amazing. Not only can we modify how you look at entries and how data is presented to you, but you have multiple levels of security to be able to control that data. And in some offices, I found that it's very important for the salespeople to be able to have their entries and nobody else gets to see them or touch them. I've seen other offices where a salesperson will have control of his entry, but he allows other people to see that entry. So that if somebody calls in and says, I'm from Fortune Metals, that salesperson can look up Fortune Metals and realize it's not my account, but Bayard's out of town or on holiday or in hospital, I'll at least do him the courtesy of doing what I can for his account, knowing he'll do the same thing for me and mine. It really does depend on how your office functions and how you choose to set things up. In this case, we have also, as part of the default key fields, what's called a starred entry. In the earlier versions of Maximizer, this would have been identified as a lead, yes or no. A starred entry, yes or no, maintains the same functionality we had before, except now it's kind of cooler, because now I can say, this is a very important entity for me. This is a company that I'm going to be doing a lot of business with. I want to be able to sort my database according to those important entries. And I can even have a star next to a person, like a contact, because I might be saying, that's my primary person I'm dealing with in Fortune Metals. It might also be the primary person I'm dealing with in any other company, etc. Okay, the last thing I want to emphasize is that when you make an entry into Maximizer, make sure you are complete, accurate, and consistent. Consistent means that, for example, however you have the Office protocol for setting up account managers, setting up full and read access, make sure you follow that with every entry. Complete and accurate should be self-explanatory. For example, if the phone number here is 604, I have 1, 2, 3, 4. I just enter them like that. I hit my tab button and Maximizer automatically spaces it for me. So that's probably the main phone number for the office. And the office may or may not have an email like info@fortunemetals.com or whatever. Website might be there. Address, typically you will know that. So 233 Other Street. And for sake of argument, let's just say it's Vancouver. As soon as I start to type it, Maximizer recognizes Vancouver. I hit enter and it's in. Our state or province here is BC. I can do it in lower letters, then hit enter to capitalize it. And this is a good point to show you something else. If I use the drop down arrow here and scroll up to the top, what I have is an editable list for that particular field. And most of these I think we've added as trainers, as we've been doing this. And you want to add a town or a city. Let's see if I've got anything here that I want to. Yes, I've got Burnaby. So let me highlight Burnaby and delete it. It'll ask me if I'm sure I want to. I click go. Let's suppose I wanted to add that town, which is a municipality contiguous to Vancouver. I would click add item. I get this simple dialog box here. I make an entry that I want to keep. requested by. If it wasn't requested by me, by somebody else, I click save. And now that town shows up down here in my items list for this particular field. When I drop out of this list, I usually like to click close. Because that was the last item I put in, Maximizer assumes that's the one I want. In this case, let's suppose it's not. I'll take that value out. I'll start to type Van again. It sees Vancouver and puts it there for me. There are a number of places in the database where you can have these drop-down lists. You can enter it once, use it forever, and once you start to type in value in the space where that list applies, Maximizer will recognize it, pull up the value, you hit enter with your on your keyboard, and it save yourself a few keystrokes. After I've done everything I can for this entry, I click save. Oh, Maximizer says, I'm sorry, but there are a couple of fields that you actually need to complete because they are mandatory and have to be filled in. And there's two. There's this one up here, which is in blue and should be in red. And I'm just going to put a value in there. I'm going to put a dot. And similarly down here, which by the way is not good database practice. When we talk about user-defined fields, we'll talk about mandatory fields at the same time. And just as a heads up for that class, we can make any field in the database mandatory, but it has to, in my opinion, be subject to two controlling rules. Number one, it has to be information you absolutely must have. And two, it has to be information that's easy to come by. Otherwise, people who are working in the database will do exactly what I have done here and put any value in this alphanumeric field to satisfy the requirement of being mandatory, and they'll slip right by. I'll click save. And now I have created that entry, Fortune Metals. I've tagged it with a red star because I've said this is going to be a very important account for me. I want to make sure that I can actually go and search by start accounts, which I can do. In fact, that's one of the powers of Maximizer. You can search for anything. The next thing I want to do is come back up to edit and look. The contact field is available because I have a parent entry in the window here. And if I want to put a contact in, Maximizer assumes that this contact belongs to this parent entry company here. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll add a contact for Fortune Metals. And the mandatory field again is in red. And let's just say this is for Harry, and we'll say his name is Williams. I use that name a lot in the database. If I do searches for Williams, I get a whole raft of these guys coming through. Now again, we want to be complete and accurate and consistent. Consistency I'm not too worried about because again over here, I'm going to select facts. I'm going to leave this public, which automatically gives read access public. And I'm going to leave the rest of these untouched at this point in time. But I'm going to come over for completeness and I'm going to put down his cell number. And you'll notice we can store 4 different phone numbers. This one down here, the bottom one, we haven't put a value to, but look at this. This is another editable list. So I can identify, and somebody's gone to the trouble of identifying a lot of different phones here. Phone 1, primary, shipping, toll-free, pager, mistress, great. Main, home, fax, direct, and whatever. Yeah, okay, we'll drop out of that. And we'll keep this. Oh, I accidentally put a value there. Let's see if I can actually not have a value. Of course I can. I can come here, click the little X, and leave it blank as it was. Now for cell, perhaps this person's cell number is going to be more like this. Again, I enter, I tab over. Now this time, Harry Williams could well have an email address. In fact, he will. So I'll put hw@maximizer.com. We don't have anybody like that here, so this prevents me from accidentally sending a real email out when I teach you how to do emails. We'll leave that as the main address. If I need a shipping address or anything else, I can click here to add a new address. I can scroll down, call it an alternate address. I can take that out and I call it shipping address if that's necessary. And this is 224, let's call it shipping lane. And again, we'll go with Vancouver, or better yet, let me show you what happens when I start typing Burnaby. It recognizes it right away. I click enter. Burnaby is also in BC. I can do lowercase, change it to uppercase by hitting enter on my keyboard. I would have a postal code, of course, or a zip code for you folks in the States. And country is also a drop-down editable list, so you can put whatever in there that is appropriate. For most of us in North America, that's going to be Canada or the USA. All right, I've added all the information I can. I click save. And now Harry is a part of my database and he's associated with Fortune Metals. Now it may be that Harry is the person that I want to deal with and establish a relationship with. So guess what? I may want to have him starred as well. How do I do that? Well, to make any changes here, I can click on this little pencil, which when you hover on it says edit, or I can double click my left mouse button anywhere. So let me just double click my left mouse button. Maximizer brings me up into edit mode. I can come over to the starred entry field, click yes, come back over here and click save, and I'm done. Now you notice when I did that, I did not have those mandatory fields come up and demand attention. That's because those particular mandatory fields were set up to be mandatory for apparent entry, is what I'm guessing, since it didn't come up for me to do anything here. And otherwise, it would have had to be answered at the contact level as well as at the company level, but not so. I want to show you how to make one other entry, and that's what we call an individual. And an individual might be, for example, your doctor or your lawyer or a close personal friend. There's a lot of different reasons why you might have an individual going into your database. One of the companies I deal with has mostly individuals in their database because they're in the tourism industry and it's people that they're dealing with. And therefore, they might have a person in the database. They might acknowledge the company they're associated with, but that's largely irrelevant. It's the person who's taking a trip, a recreational trip, so they use individuals a lot. And in this case, it's the same kind of a concept. So let's say this is a woman and her name is June McMurdy, like that. Well, of course, if I could spell anything today, that would be helpful. June McMurdy. And what's her position? Who cares? What's her company name? Again, who cares? And this might be in, well, let's say that, for example, she's in holistic health healing. Okay, that's not to recommend this or anything else, but let's just give that person an association with some entity. And let's hope that their services are better than my spelling. There we go, my typing rather. Holistic health healing. So let's suppose that June is working with this particular company right now, but I've known June for a long time. She's been very helpful to me in health-related issues, et cetera, et cetera. If June leaves this place holistic and goes out to another place or starts her own practice, June is somebody I'm going to follow. And so it's important for me to keep track of her. And again, I can put her phone number here, et cetera. I won't fill out the rest of the fields. Hopefully you get the idea. I click save, and I have now entered an individual into my database. So what does that mean? If this contact, Harry Williams, leaves Fortune Metals and goes somewhere else, I may follow him. But if I've got years of experience with Fortune Metals, let's say Harry could retire, and it wouldn't matter to me because my business is with Fortune Metals, and I'll find another contact that I'll star because this whole account is very important to me. So Harry can leave, Fortune stays. I'll continue dealing with Fortune. In this case, the company identity is very important to me. Harry, if he goes to work with another metals company, and he and I have had a great relationship, he just had a falling out at Fortune, goes someplace else, I may follow him. And perhaps that company who goes to work for might then become another one of my clients because I followed Harry or stayed in touch with him. June, it's a different kind of a relationship. I'm in tight with June. I don't care where she goes, whether she works with this outfit or sets another outfit up or goes into her own practice. I'm going to follow June. Do you see the difference? The contact works for somebody. I may or may not follow them when they leave that somebody. The person that's an individual is there because I'm following that person. They're that important to me. Now, forgive me for taking so much time on this, guys. It really is, in the scheme of things, a relatively minor issue. But I found in my practice over the past 20 years that if people understand the kinds of entries, why they exist, and what their relationship is, then you're quite a ways down the road to understanding Maximizer and being able to be comfortable using it. And in this window here, I can now view as many or as few of the entries in my database as I want. I've showed you how to enter the entries. And by the way, you can also create a default entry where things like access to be public or personal to you and the account manager, those things can be set up to automatically be filled in when you start to add a new entry. But before I go on, I want to show you a couple of other things. Let's suppose that these people that I've entered today are particularly important to me. There may be some commonality between them where I'm going to want to be able to bring this group of people up anytime I need to and maybe often. So I'm going to take them, select all of them, and I'm going to create a favorite list for them. And I do that by simply clicking View, Favorite List. I click Add, and I'm going to put some prefixes before this, just some Z's so it drops down to the bottom of the list. Looks like I need another one. And I'm going to call this my December 03 list. That's so I can identify, like you saw I did with a number of other lists previously, and this one I'll probably delete after I'm done with this today. Full access to me, read access. This is a list that I'm apparently going to keep very tightly accessible to me. The favorite list, the entries themselves are controlled on their own security level, but the list might be important to me. It might be a list that I have because I have a reason for dealing with these people. I don't want anybody else messing with my list, so I can keep it accessible only to me. Alternatively, I can look at this and say, you know what? This is a general list. We're all working together as one team. Anybody can access if they need to. Best practices is always assign a column setup. Let's pick sales potential. Always assign a column setup to your favorite lists. The reason is that should be obvious. First of all, I'll click OK. So it's now in my list. I'll come out of here. And this is one place where I can click the drop and just leave. And by the way, see this little video icon? This will take you through again the process of creating a favorite list. That list is now there, which means I can come now and clear the list here and realize I made a mistake, and I can go back and say, where is that group of people? I created a list where, there it is, my December list. Yeah, there's 3 entries, exactly, retrieve it, and I'm back working with these people again. Well, I wanted to actually clear the list to show you that these drop-down menus up here also contain the ability to do a lot of different things. You saw under Edit how I can add entries. If you come over to View, you've seen what I can do in terms of favorite lists. What I haven't shown you yet is the column setup. I promised I would, but also here I can see everything in the database. Let me see all the entries that I've got. Let me click on that, sit back for a few seconds. And in this case, my database is relatively small, so it's only got 600 entries. I can sit back and, what was that, 5 or 10 seconds. And I've got 247 companies, 121 individuals, 239 contacts. It says 3 are selected. That's the 3 that I had originally in that other list, right? Let me show you something really slick. I've got those 3 selected, so even though I've brought up this full list, Maximizer still remembers that. I can come over to Edit and make my selected list current. And now it brings back those 3 entries I selected. I may want to deselect them before I do anything else, and I recommend you do that, guys. All right, because you've seen that in the background, Maximizer remembered they were selected. Suppose, let me do this, let me show you this. Let me do that and come back and view all entries, okay? Just to kind of review and show you this again, because you always want to read things in Maximizer. You always want to double check things. So don't assume you've just simply got everybody here. Oh, look, I have 3 selected. Why is that important? Well, let's suppose you're somewhere else in the database. Let's just scroll past the selected item. And suppose you decide these three items here. Let me see if I can pick one. No, it doesn't want to let me. Oh, it's because it's still scrolling because I've told it to scroll. The little wheel is still turning around. Uh, Patience is not one of my virtues. I have to wait for it to stop doing this until I can start playing again. Let's go up here and select a couple of other entries. And I've decided these two people, Glorious Gardens and Horror of Burgers and Shakes, I don't need them in my database anymore. I want to delete them. So I make that selection, I right click, and I go to delete these entries, and I go ahead and type in delete in capital letters. I have to pay attention, like I said, to every notice I get. It says here there are 7 entries selected for deletion. Really? Yes, up here, Maximizer is telling me there are 7 selected. The 3 that I had selected originally and did not deselect, the 2 I just immediately selected, and then while I was clicking around and things were rolling, I was trying to select, and Maximizer was remembering I wanted to have a check mark in those boxes, even though it didn't show me at that time. So if I went ahead and clicked delete on all of these, I might blow away entries that are important to me. So the lesson learned is that you always keep track of what you're trying to do. Always keep track of what you've selected. Always look at every message you ever see. I can select all of these now. I can deselect all. And you notice I no longer have X number selected for any particular reason. Now, that's what I can do with view and favorite lists and view all entries. If I just want to see companies and individuals, I can do that. If I want to see just my contacts, I can do that. Suppose I want to see just my individuals. Well, if I went to this list, I'm still going to have, what, 300 and some odd in my list, 368 in my list. What am I going to do? Go through and highlight each individual or sort by type of entry, which I can do. I can sort by type of entry, and then I can find a starting place for individuals and for companies, and I can segregate them somehow. And I notice I've got starred as well as unstarred. And I look at this and say, man, that's going to be a lot of work. Isn't there a better way? Yes, there is. Come to this next title here where it says search, the next drop down. And I can search by company. But if I want all individuals, I'll go here to last name. Because you saw that an individual mandatory field is the last name. I uncheck contacts. I tell Maximizer to replace the list here with the search results and give me all entries, not just starred, not just unstarred, but give me all entries. And if I leave the field up here blank, if I don't put a value there and click OK, then Maximizer will do that. It'll give me all the individuals in my database, starred or unstarred, and I will have 121 individuals displayed. And I check up here exactly what I expect to see. I could also search again by last name, uncheck individuals, leave contacts checked. I'll get all the contacts in the database, but the more efficient way of doing that, of course, is just simply to ask for all contacts. And conversely, if I just wanted the companies, I can come up here and search. This time I can actually search by company. Aha, Maximizer recognizes that there could be a company field filled out for any individual, and it will therefore bring back those individuals with an identified company name attached to them. I uncheck, leave this blank, I'll get all of the true companies in my database. Again, replace list with the search results and all entries, and I'm good to go. Before I leave this screen, narrow the list means that I take a look at only what's here. And perhaps I've got, instead of 121 displayed, and instead of individuals, let's assume I've got several thousand of both companies and individuals. I want the companies that are in that list. It may be a list I've bought. Let me just see the companies in that list. Maximizer will segregate that out. If I like this list here of 121 individuals, and I want all the companies in the world, I might want to add my search results to this list. Now, if I do that now, I'm going to get companies plus individuals, which of course, as you know, I can get far more efficiently by just asking for that. Additional drop-down things that are useful. Well, I did tell you that column setup was something I would show you, so let me give you a quickie on that right now. By default, Maximizer shows me the column setup I'm currently using. This is true if I've got all column setups set here. Now it may be the first time you use this, it's going to come back to you as my column setups. Fortuitously, sales potential is in my column setups, but what you want to do is go to my column setups and then probably switch it over to all column setups, close it, and then come back at it, view, column setup, there we go. See the one that I want in all column setups, okay? The reason I make a point of that is that if you haven't got that particular column set up under my column setups, you may not get to see the actual one you're working with, whereas all means literally that, all, and you get to see whatever there is in there, regardless of whether it's under yours or somebody else's who's made it available to you as well. Good. If I want to change it, I click Properties. If I want to add a brand new column setup, I can click Add, and I end up with this kind of a dialog box, which will make more sense if I actually come over here and click Properties to show you what it's like to change a column setup. Here, I could change the title of this if I wanted, but I'll keep it as it is. But what's important is that from top to bottom here is equal to left to right out here in, let's call it the real world. I don't think I can push that low enough to show you, but I can push it kind of to the side. So for example, date last contacted, looks like it's about the fourth field in. Yep, 1, 2, 3, 4, date last contacted. Top to bottom here equals left to right up here. And again, here's the video that shows you how to create and modify column setups. I'd rather have you take the time to look at that so that I can get through the rest of what I need to in our class here today. And there's the same video there as well. Alrighty. Oh, by the way, if I like that column setup, but I want to call it something different, make some changes to it, I can just click Save As. Maximizer brings it up without a title and waits for me to put a brand new title there for that particular column setup, which has all the same entries or items in here. And it may be that I need to take account manager and delete that. I'm not interested. Territory, I'm not interested. And I think, oh, wait a minute. I want to have the account manager after all. Okay, I click Add. Maximizer says, I'm holding space for you as a new column. What do you want in it? Don't type in here. You come over here and click on Insert Field. You find the entity that you want, the field that you want. When you click on it and see it down here and click OK, Maximizer now ties that field to this particular column. And if I clicked OK, that would be part of this column. It would be there forever until I made a change, etc. I'll cancel simply because, that's as much as I think I need to show you at this point in time. Now, the next thing that's important to understand is this, and I'm going to go back to that favorite list of the entries I added. So I'll come down here. I'm going to find that favorite list again, my December 03 list, 3 entries. I'll click Retrieve. It's going to replace what's there. And there's the 3 entries that we created when we started our class today. Okay, and I've got a column set up that gives me information about them. Remember I said best practice was to associate a column setup with a favorite list? That's because when you bring entries into the database and you want to look at them, doesn't it make sense to have data you can look at right away? That's what that's there for. Now, the last thing I want to show you is under Actions here. No, excuse me. Let me come back to that and just pause here at Search. This advanced search is a very powerful tool, and I'm going to show that to you in the advanced class, ironically enough, but I'll mention it here just so you can get a taste for it. When I click on that, I get this dialog box. The first time I ever saw this, I thought I had to start typing in here, but I don't. I click the Add button over here. This allows me to search by any of my basic fields or my user-defined fields, which I haven't explained to you yet, but I will. And a basic field, as you can imagine, is just kind of basic information, phone numbers, addresses, things like that. Let me drop out of this and advise you to look at this video here if you want to get a head start against Wednesday. But in Wednesday, I'll deal with this because this is one of the most powerful tools that you will find in Maximizer. So now I can come over to Actions. There are many things you can do simply by being in here and right-clicking your mouse or clicking your right mouse button. And you can look down this whole list of things. There's just a lot you can do. Personally, I like to use actions because sometimes when I'm using my mouse, I'll slip and I'll click on the wrong place. This is a lot easier for me to click on and do what I need to. For example, schedule a meeting means that I want to go and see Harry Williams. Maybe I want to go see him and I want to have that show up in my calendar, my module over here. Alternatively, if I say schedule a to-do, that means I want to schedule a task, and that means whatever I schedule with Harry is going to show up over here in my hot list module. It's going to show up elsewhere too, and I'll probably show you that before I actually create either one of those. And other actions, what have I got? Schedule a meeting, schedule a to-do, talked about that. Action plans I'll talk about in, I think, either the intermediate or the advanced course. I may want to write an email to this person. So that's where we're going to end up in just another minute. In other words, how we communicate with our people. But I want to make sure you understand that these drop-down menus up here give you a number of different things you can do. And I would recommend that you just click on something, click on it, see what you go, where you go and what it does. You can't break it. So just go ahead and have some fun and learn your way around the product. Now, I told you about these tab following windows, which I want to emphasize next before I show you actually how to do some things. What I'm getting at is this. Any entry I point to up here will initially control the information that I see in any of these tab following windows. So let me push this up a little bit so I have a little more room down below. And first of all, I've got Harry Williams as a contact, and you'll notice that he's listed there, the company he's with, and the address he's at. And down here, if I just scroll my mouse or use the scroll button over here on the far right, I get to see his phone numbers, I get to see his email address, and of course I can click on the edit button and change any values in there I need to. I can also click on the print, I can also click on find him in my maps, and I can copy them. So there's little things that you can do all over the place. I can click on here and Maximizer will bring up the call ability. Let's just go click on that so I can show you what I mean. I click on that. Maximizer says lift the receiver and dial. I can also come here under actions and make a call or receive a call. And the reason it's important to have that as part of your actions and drop down and so on is because when you do it that way, Maximizer records the fact that you made a call or received a call, and Maximizer will generate a call note that you can write in details about the call and keep that. And later on, you can come to report and you can have an incoming versus outgoing calls report. Your manager may come to you and say, Bayard, I want to know what calls you did 3 days ago. That was a blitz we were doing. I'd like to see what you did. And I say, hey, no problem, dude. Well, no problem, sir, ma'am. All I have to do is go over to my report, go to my incoming versus also outgoing calls report, select that date that I want that report for, and click OK. And it'll bring back everything, all the calls I made, provided I either establish the call this way or went to actions and make a call or receive a call, then that activity will be recorded. And you know what? In some companies, that's extremely important. So I recommend that you become confident with using that as well. Anyway, I'm down here in my details window for Harry. And because I'm selecting Harry up here, not even selecting, I'm highlighting. Selecting means I put a check mark there. Otherwise, I'm just highlighting him. And I'm seeing basic information here, which of course I can edit. On the right-hand side of the screen, I'm seeing what we call default key fields. And as I'll show you tomorrow, we can create any number of different key field lists. But the point is, default key fields include some basic field information, but also includes user-defined fields, which reading backwards are fields defined by the user. When I click on this tab here, I get to see all of the user-defined fields, or UDFs as we call them, that have been created in my database. If your database is brand new, this is probably going to be pretty empty. But if you're joining a company that's been using Maximizer for a while, you will probably have any number of folders, which these are, and inside folders, you'll have any number of user-defined fields. A user-defined field, or a UDF, is simply a place to be able to record some characteristic of the entry that you're dealing with. Maybe I want to know what kind of eye color Harry has. Maybe I want to know what his favorite pastime is, his favorite sport. I want to know what he's in the habit of buying, when he likes to talk to me. There are any number of things like that that I might want to know. As you can see down here, what's his risk tolerance, etc. So I can set up UDFs for any kind of information I want to track against one or more of the entries in my database. And the nice thing is, build a field once, you can apply it to as many entries as you want. Maximizer will remember discrete values for each field for each entry. Now, the beauty of the Details tab is that if, as you saw in there, I had many folders and many fields, far more than I want to keep track of, I can create a key field list which brings up a selection of the most important basic fields and user-defined fields that I feel I need to keep track of. So I can look at Harry, I can look at the most important information here, I can flip to a different key field list and see different batches of information, etc. Much more efficient than going over to my user-defined field tab, entering data there, searching for data there, much more efficient to have it here. And when I click on the edit button here, not only do I get to change basic fields, but I get to change values for any of these other fields as well. Now, if I go to my Contacts tab following window, what I'm going to do here is see Harry, and I'm also going to see the company field here. I generally don't keep this tab window up here and showing, even though I can have a different column set up here than I have up here, which allows me to see different information. As I said, there's a lot of different ways you can use Maximizer, and you can customize to the way it makes sense for you, the way you use it. But if all I want to do is know who the contacts are, I can hover over here and I can see, all right, I'm looking at Fortune. Harry is bold and he's at the top here, which means I'm looking at him right now. Let me come back to Details and emphasize something for you. Harry Williams, Harry Williams. Come and hover here. It may be I really want to take a look at Fortune Metals, the company itself, so I select it. Now Fortune Metals is bold, Harry is not, and all the information I'm seeing here and along in all these tab windows is more specific to the company than to the contact. There may be some shared elements in there, but it's more specific to the company. Whereas I shift over to Harry, and now the information in these windows and here is going to be more specific to Harry. Notes can be specific or general. And under Notes here, I can come over to the side and click Add a Note here to document anything I've done to or said with Harry. Or I can click Add over here. Doesn't really matter. Either way, I get to actually generate a note. And you'll notice that this is large up here. I can just go ahead and type to my heart's content. The note is going to be date and time stamped, also tell who created the note. And again, I've got a security level here. I can decide whether or not I want to have full access to me and read access to public, or it may be I want this note private to me entirely, in which case full access will be me and read access will be me. And I'm sorry, the rest of the company, you don't get to know what I'm actually saying to Harry. So, I've got those kinds of choices. When I click OK, that note is logged here into the database. It's logged and attached to Harry. If I come over here to Fortune Metals, there's no notes. Oh, wait a minute. I can come over here and click in this box, Show All, in which case I get to see all the notes that are in the database referring to this parent entry and any contacts associated with it. Uncheck it, and it's like having a whole separate database for each of the contacts I'm dealing with at that company, because I can segregate out my notes that easily. Similarly with documents, if I want to, I can add a document. So let me just go ahead and click here, New Document, or over here, Add a Document. So let's go ahead and click Add a Document over here. We clicked Add a Note in the context of the Notes window. We'll click Add a Document from the Actions menu over here, and I can browse. to this. I can browse anywhere. If I come over here and click on Add a Document, I get the newer version of this particular thing. Here, I can drag and drop. If I've got my Windows Explorer open, I can drag and drop files into here. Alternatively, I can click on Browse, and I can go and find whatever I want. Let's say this is a logo test. I don't know what that is. Let's go ahead and click Open. It's now been added to my documents library. And you'll notice the restrictions, 50 meg and total number of 10 you can add all at once. I click OK. And that document is now in here. I was looking at Harry, so it's attached to him. Let me go back over to Fortune Metals and see if we still see it. We don't until we click Show All, and then we get to see it. So I've got it here. If I decide I don't want it, I can select it, and I can click on the trash can here to dump it, and it'll be gone. So if I click here, Maximizer asks, are you sure you want to delete it? What did I tell you before? Always read these messages so you know what you're going to be doing. I'll click cancel so I can just leave it there for now. I can uncheck show all, and under Fortune Metals I don't see it, but under Harry Williams I do see it. Now, opportunities, customer service. An opportunity is a sales thing, something I'm selling that's going to take multiple steps or time to get to the bottom line of having the customer buy. So I might want to generate an opportunity for that particular sales activity. There are some companies who insist that everything their salespeople do is tagged as an opportunity so that they can then evaluate over time. If we're trying to sell this product, how often are we successful selling it? If we're trying to sell this particular service, how often are we successful selling that? And who are the people who typically buy it? When do they typically buy, etc. So from a marketing point of view, it makes perfect sense to always identify opportunities when you're going about doing your selling. Now, the thing is, if I come over to the Opportunities tabbed following window, and I'm not going to do this today, but if I click on the plus button here to create an opportunity, it will be logged into the tabbed following window called Opportunities. It will be associated with Fortune Metals as well as the contact Harry Williams. And if I said Fortune Metals was going to be one of my most important corporate entities to whom I'm going to sell, in time, I'll have a whole list of opportunities under here that I've attempted and hopefully closed and sold. I'll be able to have a history of that activity with this entry, Fortune Metals. Now, because when I click the plus button here, it takes me over to the opportunities module and gets me started doing an opportunity there, and also records it in the opportunities module. Right now, I'm working with Fortune Metals. Tomorrow, I could be working with indifferent metals or exclusive metals or some other kind of an organization. And eventually, in my opportunities module, I will end up being able to see the opportunities across my whole database, across my whole business. Over here, specific to this entry. Over here, general to all entries. And as you can tell, from a marketing point of view, I'll get different information, perhaps, different conclusions if I'm evaluating what I sell to Fortune Metals and how I sell and when they buy and what they buy, etc. That could potentially be different from what the general experience across my whole database is. Alternatively, they may parallel each other, which makes, of course, better sense and is a more efficient way, hopefully, to end up doing business. But that's the difference. That's why you have a module here to keep track of all the opportunities, and you have a tab following window here to keep track of opportunities specific to Fortune Metals. Similarly with customer service. Except customer service is a place where you can track problems you have with your customer, and over time that might show you that you've got some issues with your business processes that you have to address. For example, if I have a damaged in shipment situation that occurs multiple times with this entry, I got to address that. Otherwise, it's going to cost me time and probably money and other resources to take proper care of that entry. Finally, this plus button over here allows me to decide what I'm going to see. Remember I said that if I've done my details list over here and my key fields list well, I'm probably not going to want to bother with a user-defined field following window. Similarly for contacts, unless I like the idea of having a separate column set up for information there as well as for up here, I'm probably not going to want to bother with that. And the other fields I'll keep as I see them. I click Save. Maximizer goes through a screen refresh, removes those ones I didn't want to play with. Simply, it reduces my visual clutter. Okay, I have fewer tab windows I'm going to be following. Similarly over here, I've talked briefly about opportunities in customer service. Leads, I promised I'd at least click on that to take you over there to show you what the leads module looks like. Because if I do that, and I'll deal with it in detail tomorrow, but here I have the chance to add leads into my database before I take them into the address book. So if I buy a list of leads, I may want to drop them into my leads module here, which I can do via the import utility here. Okay, I may want to import them into my leads module, work them through. The ones that are absolutely worthless, I'll delete. The ones that aren't going to be any good for me right now, I may end up archiving. For example, let me click on Rebecca. She's new. I'll click on Rebecca Santana. When I do that, I have a chance to archive her. If she's just a tire kicker right now, in the future, we'll have the ability to bring those archive leads back in if they show signs of life. And I may link her to an existing entry in the database. I may end up converting her to becoming a new entry in the database. That's the kind of things that I will be doing when we take a look at leads tomorrow. And in terms of the other modules, I'm going to show you calendar and hotlist because we're going to do something with them. But all the others, I may take a look at that and say, you know what, I don't need to look at that. The app directory just simply shows me all the different integrations that are available between Maximizer and other types of software. Let's see, the company library is where I can put important documents that I may want to access, which makes sense when I'm out in the field, particularly because I may be on my smartphone and I may have forgotten to bring a document with me. I can use my smartphone to log into Maximizer and identify the document that's in the company library and email it to the person who's sitting across from me, and they can look at it right away. That's how slick this thing actually is and how well it works. Knowledge base, I solved some customer service cases. I may want to keep track of that down here. Campaigns are kind of a really interesting module because the way the campaign module works is like this. Let's suppose that I want to send out 6 emails to a whole bunch of prospects, and they've given me permission to do that. And I know it's going to take 3 to 6 emails, a concerted effort to get them interested in actually doing something with me. So I fire off 6 emails. Wait a minute. If I have a whole bunch of people I want to do that to, do I want to do that one at a time? No, I don't. I will write the emails. I'll put them into an email campaign, and then I'll attach a recipient list to that campaign. And in that campaign, I instruct Maximizer to send the first email as soon as I start the campaign. Send the second email 3 days later. Send the third one a week after that, and so on until I start to get response from people. And all I have to do is set up a campaign, attach the list to it, and press go, and Maximizer takes care of all the rest for me. That's the beautiful beauty of dealing with campaigns. But for right now, it may be that there's a lot more here that I don't really want to look at. So what I'm going to do is come over to my gear, click on it, and look at that, customize the icon bar. I click on that and I say, okay, take off quotas. Yeah, if my manager wants me to deal with that, I will. Take off the knowledge base and this and this. Take off all these and leave me just with the remainder there that I see. Yeah, I can live with those. And are they in the order I want? Yep, I'll keep them in that order. So I click OK. And then I click Save. I go through another screen refresh. So from when I started, when you were seeing everything down here and virtually everything along here, this may be a better indication of how I work. And therefore, I restrict how many places I'm going to be playing. Kind of like reducing the size of your sandbox to a size that actually makes sense for how you do your business. So let me now go on and talk about putting in a calendar appointment, a hot list. And let me start though by talking about emailing to these people, which is of course very important. Harry Williams. I come over to my details window and I notice when I look down below here, Harry has got an email address. Well, to send an email to him, doesn't it make sense to simply click on that? And that's what I do. And that brings up the email dialog box. Maximizer says, you're going to send this to Harry Williams, aren't you? Yep. And over here, is this a service announcement or is this a marketing-based email? Well, let's leave it at service announcement for now because I haven't actually tagged Harry as having given me permission to send a marketing email. I can now come to my subject line here. And maybe I met Harry at a conference and I want to say this is info from the conference. And over here I have some choices. I'm not sure if any of those is the right choice. So instead of selecting it, what I'll do is drop out. My cursor is still there. I'll come down to my merge field button here. And here I'll type conference, C-O-N-F, have Maximizer find all the fields related. Looks like there's 4. It shows me down there 4 results. Well, the one that I'm interested in is this one, the most recent conference attended. It shows up here. I click OK, and I have now added that user-defined field to my subject line. Now I come down here and I say hi, and I want this to be personal. So I hit my merge field button again. This time I don't have to search because I know that my first name is just right there. I've highlighted first name, it's selected. I click OK, and now I see hi, Harry. And I go ahead and type my email message, whatever I want to do. And down here, I make sure I have this line to unsubscribe, do this. And that keeps me in compliance with the anti-spam legislation. When I'm finished doing everything I want to, I simply click send. Oh, wait a minute. I also double check down here where it says include message body and note and save copy to entries documents. And if I wanted to, if I put an attachment on this email and wanted to include it in the copy, I would put a check mark there. Now, the thing is, as I look at this, I'm going to show you in preferences a place where you can set that up. So by default, you will always have these 2 boxes check marked. But if you forget or you want to change it on the fly, you can adjust it there. And why that's important is because Maximizer does not cycle through Outlook or Gmail or any other email client. What Maximizer does is when you send an email from within Maximizer, it goes out through our own SMTP server to the net, and from there out to whoever the recipient is. What you want to do is keep a copy of that email in your entries documents window if you ever want to see what that email looked like when you sent it. So I click send. Maximizer goes through and fires it off. I come down to my documents window for Harry, and there it is, December 3rd, email info from the. This is not a good example, of course, because I didn't tag him properly with having attended that particular conference or some conference or other. But this is now a reply all forward, or print. I can do all the things I normally would with an email, and it's personalized. And as long as I've made sure I didn't mess up here, he's going to think I'm pretty sharp in sending these kind of emails to him. What I can also do is take this. I've got an individual and I've got a contact. Both of those will probably have email addresses. June McMurdy may not. I don't think we set one for her. But what I can do is come up to actions, write an email. And here I can select all selected entries and click OK. And then I've got those 2 entries there ready to receive an email. Maximizer warns me that one of them doesn't have, one or more doesn't have an email address. They've been skipped. I click OK. But now what Maximizer is doing for the rest is merging to a list. Now, yes, you know, in my example here, I've only got 2 entries. One of them doesn't have an email address, so merge to list really means it's just being merged to Harry. But in the normal course of things, I use this facility to send out bulk emails to any number of people. And if it's a service announcement, I might be sending out to 200 or 300 at a time to advise them that there's been a change in how Maximizer does this, that, or the other. Please be aware of this, and here's what it means for you, etc. And everybody will get a personal email to them in their name, and the subject line will be personalized to them as well. And as far as anybody can tell, I cared enough to send an individual email to each one of those 200 or 300 people, because I told Maximizer to merge to a list and send these emails separately. You'll have to test that with yourself, sending an email to yourself and a couple of your friends or whatever, to satisfy yourself that when you use this facility, it really does send things out without showing all the other email addresses that were recipients. The email address field is confined to just the one person at a time to whom it was sent. That's how it works. But I had to test this to believe it myself, and I know you will too. But after you play with it a time or two, you'll say, yeah, got it, man. I'm never sending these out individually again or doing cut and paste or anything else. Everybody gets this stuff. And by the way, let me go back to Harry, details, back down to his email address. There's another facility that's built in at this level, and it's called templates. Now, I'll show you how to create templates. I can't remember if I do that in the intermediate or advanced, but you will find out how to create email templates, which again will cut down hugely on the amount of time that you have to spend. Build it once, use it forever. That's one of the principles of Maximizer. Now, where do I have to take you next? I have to mention this integration to you. So let me do that right off here. Come over here and click on desktop and mobile setup. We do this for you when we onboard you as a general rule. And if you don't have us do it, it's because you have a business partner who can do it for you, or you may want to insist on doing it yourself. But I'm showing you today Maximizer using Internet Explorer. And I'm sorry, but we're still stuck with using that for this particular integration, particularly with Word. Because I'm using Internet Explorer, I have the opportunity to see this download the Word integration. When I click on that, it takes maybe 2 minutes or so. And the only thing I have to do after I've clicked on this is put a check mark next to the I agree to the end user license agreement, which is nothing. But once it goes through and finishes, I come back over to my address book. And up here on this address, this top line here, I will see a W, which allows me to actually do a couple of things. I can create labels, envelopes, and word-based templates. And this is far more powerful than the old version of Maximizer, where we used to have our own internal editor. Being able to use the facility of Word is just, like I said, a lot more powerful. There's a lot more you can do with it. I can come to administration and the template library, and I'll discuss that in advance. But I can have legal documents there where I can put the document into Maximizer, bring it up, and turn it into a template by adding merge fields. And then I can use the facility here to bring it up anytime I want and merge the fields from the entries that I'm highlighting or selecting here. One or more, doesn't matter. And I can print that out or save it as a PDF, fire it off, kind of whatever. So it's a nice way of being able to personalize specific things with not only basic fields, but user-defined fields, and being able to, again, just reduce the workload that you have to do otherwise. Now, another thing I wanted to show you here is preferences. I come over here. You've seen me click on this wheel a couple of times. Before I go there, let me go to this, which is sort of preferences in a slightly different way. When I click on the image here, which could be yourself, I haven't got my own image up there, but I probably should. I can come down here and I can view profile. And that means that I can make sure I've got a valid email address here, because I need to have a valid email address here in order to send emails from within Maximizer. The rest of this, phone numbers, addresses, all those kind of things, display name, etc. Those are all optional, nice things to have, because you can add those as merge fields. The merge fields associated with you, the user. If you create an email signature, or you create a template where you want your name in a certain place, you can pull that out of here. So it's worth setting up, but the most important element is to make sure you have a valid email address there, which by default you will when you ship the product to you. If I come over here and click on this gear thing and click on user properties, I would end up with the same dialog box here that I got by clicking on my face and selecting my profile. So 2 different ways to get there. But here under preferences, a couple of things that are important. Set your locale. I usually like to use English United States simply because I like the way numbers and dates show up when I do that. And clicking the locale and time zone Also allows me to have my phone numbers tagged out here properly as well. Up here, I think the product ships with 500 maximum number entries retrieved. You want to click all unless you've got a super large database you're working with, because when you do a search, you want to be able to get back all the results associated with that search. And the rest you can basically leave as you see it. Other preferences over here. Again, a lot of this you can leave the way you see it, but this is where you can make changes. For example, carry forward unfinished tasks and unfinished appointments. And I'm going to have to hurry with this so that I can show you how to set an appointment, etc. This is where I tell Maximizer to carry forward unfinished tasks and appointments. I can also say, show me completed tasks and show me completed appointments, but I'm not usually interested in that, and I can use a filter to be able to see that a different way. Down here, include address book entries and appointment email reminders. I recommend check marking that. And I think this may ship with never. If it does, make sure that you select ask so that you have the chance to be able to put this iCalendar attachment to your emails as well. Now, the next thing that's most important up here is email, in my opinion. This is where you tell Maximizer by default to save a copy to the entries documents and the message body in a note, and when sending email to multiple entries, set the default as separately, merging to a list. Put your check mark there, there, and there. By default, it should be there as well. It might even be on these others by default. And by the way, under here, I can click on auto signature, and this is where I can actually build my signature and decide where I want that signature to show up. The next thing that's important is startup. When starting, go directly to. I generally recommend that you go to your calendar or your hot list. Our sales manager lives off his calendar, then his hot list, then his leads, ops, customer service, and address book. So he probably has his address book set to open up to his calendar. In my case, I generally prefer to either go to my address book or to my hot list, but here's where I can set how I want that to be. And then down here, select a list of view at startup for my address book. Well, for my address book, I like to view my list from my last session. If I go to opportunities, I might want to have the same thing, view current opportunities, customer service cases. I might want to have view my current cases, and then over here still, back at the address book. And you have other choices you can follow, play with those choices, see what they do for you. Click OK when you've made some choices and changes, and click Save to keep those choices in place. To save time, I'll just click Cancel so I don't have to worry or waste time with a screen refresh. One other thing I showed you partly was on the desktop and mobile setup. Let me show you the rest of that. The next thing you want to do after you've done the Word integration is to do the Outlook integration. Again, this has probably been done for you. And the reason you want that is because with the Outlook integration in place, you can save emails that you have received. If you're using Outlook as your email client and you send an email to somebody from within Maximizer, doesn't cycle through Outlook, but their response to you will cycle through Outlook, won't it? And so it comes back into Outlook. You can grab that email, save it to the document or to the entry rather that you want to. And you can even set Maximizer up to automatically save every email that comes from this person or that person or whatever. And then finally, down here is the URL for using Maximizer on your smartphone. And remember, the initial thing was CAW. This is CAM. W was for web, M is for mobile. You can copy this URL into your cell phone, or if your cell phone is set up to receive email, you can email it directly to your phone, open it and place it from there on your desktop and work with it from there. Now, I've talked to you about the videos that we have in place, and actually I could have shown you more of those. Here's one over here for key field lists for creating them. And you'll find them in most of the places where you come to some discrete place where you're doing something. If you want to see all of them, come up to the question mark up here, click on it, click on General Help, and you'll see this video tutorials, which I'm probably going to get renamed as training videos, or training video library or something like that, so it's a little more obvious actually what it is. You can scroll down and look at any of the videos that we have prepared. You can come back to General Help up here. You can put in something you want to search for. Maximizer will find options in the walkthroughs and in the general help and elsewhere that you can go to right away to help you do whatever it is you're not sure how to do. So again, just always remember this help button up here is one of your very good friends. Now let's suppose I'm dealing again with Harry over here, Harry Williams, and I decide I want to meet the guy. Better yet, let me decide first of all, I want to call him to meet him. So what am I going to do? Well, I'm going to go to Actions. I'm going to schedule a to-do. And this is drop dead easy. This dialog box comes up here where I can specify the date that I want to call him. Let's say I'm going to do that Wednesday after training, and I'm going to say call to set appointment. And do I want a time on this? A hot list, like a task, is timeless. In other words, you don't have to have a time associated with it. You can if you want to, but you don't have to. You can also set an alarm for this task and say 10 minutes before, except I haven't got it. I've set it to happen on that day. Doesn't make a lot of sense for an alarm there. And I've created by me, assigned to me. Sometimes I may have a task that I think might be better handled by my fictitious assistant, Miranda. So I might do that instead. But in this case here, I'm just going to go ahead and assign it back to me because I'm the one who has to take care of this. He's going to be my key guy that I want to deal with. I click OK, and that task is now set. Is it? How do I know that? Well, I can come over to my Activities tab window, which I deliberately ignored earlier, so that I could show you now I have a task associated with this guy. I can click on this. It'll bring up the dialog box for the task again. I may have put more information in here, and I can see that at a glance right here and now before I actually make my call. Also, over here in my hot list window, let's see what we've got there. I'll move this down a bit so I have a chance to see more of what's there. What do we got? Yeah, we've got a bunch. Some in January 2019 coming up. December 5th, there it is. Call to set appointment. And there's all the other ones. Call Francis to invite to our upcoming conference. Similar kind of a call. And I've got some of these ones that are overdue. Not too bad. Only goes back as far as November 20th. Call the president. Sure. He's waiting for my call, I'm sure. And so on and so forth. As I finish any particular task, like let's say this one down here, prepare disclosure materials, I can mark it as complete. Maximizer will say, do you want to do a follow-up? I'll say, no, not in this case. It's marked for complete. Because I'm not interested in looking at my completed task, I can do a refresh, and that November 27 task will now be gone. It still exists. I can bring it back if I want to and look at it again, but it's gone from my active window. And you notice I set a filter here for next month. That's so that I could see, for example, this one coming up in January 10th. Gone through the holiday season, come back to work. Right, this is a start date for something with Gary. Obviously, I would have more information if I had created that hot list task. And the purpose of this is so that I don't walk in on a day and it's the next day of a month or something, and all of a sudden I've been sandbagged because I forgot about a particular thing that I was going to have to do. Rather than get sandbagged, I usually make a selection here, show me next month. It also, I've told Maximizer, remember under preferences when I was up here, I told it to show me my unfinished tasks and appointments, so I get to see the things that I still have to either take care of or write off as having been done or otherwise delete. Now, let's suppose the 5th has come and gone. I've called, where is it? Scroll up a bit here. There it is, the 29th, called to meet, called Francis, called, oh, there it is, the 5th right down there. Okay, because it's sorted by activity. Sorry, guys. I need to sort it by date, dummy. There we go. So call to set appointment. The 5th has come and gone. Harry said, yes, let's meet on that Friday. So what can I do? Well, I'm highlighting this here. I'll come up here and ask to see this guy in the address book. If he's not there, Maximizer will put him there for me, but he is there, so I don't have to go any further. And what I can do now is go to Actions and schedule a meeting. This takes me over to the calendar, gives me a calendar dialog box here, and the purpose of the meeting is to discuss next fiscal purchases. I always have to put something up there. Let me show you what happens. Let me cut that and let me go ahead and click Save. and I get this subject cannot be empty. So I'll put that subject back in. I'll decide a date on this, not the 3rd today. He said to come on Friday, and he asked me to come at about 8 in the morning so we get a good start. I promised him I'd keep it down to a half an hour, which I know I can do. The location I can put over here as Harry's office. Alternatively, forget that I hit the caps lock button. Alternatively, if I have someplace in here that meets or fits for what we want to, where we want to go, we can do that instead. More descriptions, etc. Play with all these other things are pretty straightforward. One final thing, let's suppose that I decided I needed to take Ian with me on this call. I start typing users Ian. He's also in the address book, but let's assume it's the maximizer user Ian I want. He shows up down here now as well. And when I click save, Maximizer will ask me, would you like to notify the appointment attendees via email? Normally I'd say yes, but this time I'll say no, so Ian doesn't need to get that. So that's how easy it is to do this kind of work and work with these people, guys. And I want you to remember again, this is my closing statement, as it was my opening statement. Remember this phone number and remember this email address. If you would like a copy of this webinar, just let me know. You've got a survey coming out at the end, and I'll wrap up the session now. And again, if you want a copy of it, ask me and I'll be happy to send it to you. Bye for now.